Hello, welcome back to other breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine. I've got a lot of big news coming out from this war that I'd like to talk to you about today. So, we're going to start off with three major topics. We're going to start with this first one here on your screen. Russia's Hmeimim airbase comes under attack by unidentified drones. Russia's Hmeimim airbase in northwestern Syria was attacked by drones in the early hours of Tuesday morning, according to reports by Syrian Telegram channel Saberine News and Syrian Ozent. Okay, so yeah, last night in the early morning hours, we had the Hmeimim airbase in Syria coming under attack by multiple drones, and we don't know exactly where they came from. As you can see here, it says unidentified, but there was many pro-Russian bloggers on Telegram that were claiming that this was most likely an attack from the Syrian authorities that are currently in control of Syria right now. So this is probably another major sign that Russia is not welcomed inside of Syria anymore. I talked to you guys about that yesterday, that Russia could be out of Syria here very soon. So we'll see what happens, but we did have a major attack inside of the Hmeimim Air Base last night. I do have video footage coming out from that area as there was an ongoing attack and Russian air defense teams were trying to bring down these incoming drones. So we also have reports that Ukraine was attacked overnight as well. I believe there was 176 drones flying into Ukraine coming from Russia last night. We have explosions reported in Kyiv, in the capital. Also in the Kyiv region, we have an apartment building that took a direct hit as well. I've got pictures and video footage coming out from there. And we're also going to be discussing the U.S. and Russia meeting in Riyadh today in Saudi Arabia, okay? And they were meeting for talks on ending the war and trying to create bilateral ties and resolve a lot of issues between the two countries and ultimately just talk about Ukraine and Russia and trying to, get to some sort of resolution on ending this war. So we'll talk about that as well as we move forward in today's video. So let's go ahead and jump into this, guys. We're going to hop on over here to X and we'll give you some information on all these topics. I've also got numerous other things we'll talk about in today's video as well. So we'll start off here with Nexta. Russian airbase Hmeimim in Syria attacked by drones overnight. This marks the first attack on Russian military facilities in Syria since the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. Russian Z-War correspondents complained that Russian military bases in Syria will not be allowed to function normally and blame the attack on Islamist groups linked to the country's new authorities. Okay, so you can see here the country's new authorities. So this would be the group that's in power over there right now, also known as HTS. So we don't know who exactly attacked them last night, but looks like this is the first time that they have been attacked since Bashar al-Assad fled the country and Russia basically lost control over Syria. So let's go ahead and show you this video real quick. We're going to hop into this about 25 seconds long. So go ahead and take a look at this. All right, so just a quick clip, but we can see what looks like maybe some air defense interceptors heading up into the skies to take down some of these incoming drones. You can also hear a lot of anti-aircraft gunfire as well in the distance. Looks like a lot of drones were attacking the Hmeimim Air Base last night. We don't have too much information on the extent of the damages over here, but we know for sure that it was attacked. Maybe we'll get some information here in the next 24 hours, but that's the only video right now that has been coming out on X, okay? So we're going to jump on to another update now. This one from Astra. In Dolinska, Kyiv region, a Russian drone strike on a residential building resulted in wounds to a woman and her two children. Okay, so we've got a picture here to show you guys. We had a drone strike directly on this building. Looks like it potentially hit the side of the building right here and destroyed the sidewall of it. You can see a major fire right there. Here's another angle as well. We can see the other side of the building looks like it's on fire as well. And here's the damage of that incoming drone as it exploded, crashing into the sidewall of this building. Okay, so massive damage here on an apartment building, and unfortunately, we do have some injuries. Okay, so a woman and her two children that were inside of this building were unfortunately affected by the explosion of this drone. Here's a video also coming out from Max 24. Competent leadership, Musk said. Effing bastards is what he says here. So, what he's actually responding to was there was a statement that came out from Elon Musk yesterday. Most of you probably know who he is. So he came out on X yesterday and he posted a video of Sergei Lavrov and the Russian delegation, excuse me, showing up inside of Saudi Arabia to meet with the U.S. And he basically made a statement saying on X that this was the example of competent leadership. Okay, so this is kind of what Max 24 is responding to, saying, "Hey, this is not competent leadership. Look at what the Russians are doing when they struck this building." So you can see here in the video footage this Russian drone that struck the same apartment building, catching on fire. We can see the emergency crews here on the scene trying to rescue people inside and put out the blaze. Okay, so that was a statement from Max 24 today. Now, also from Vicegrad24, Russia launched a drone swarm attack against Kyiv tonight. Okay, so we got a pretty scary video here of a woman inside of her house, and she's listening to some incoming drone, and it explodes very close to her and even makes the camera shake. So take a look at this, pretty insane.
Нам потолок оборвало, бачите?
Тихо. Зараз будуть бити його.
Ёб твою мать. Пиздец. Нам потолок.
All right, pretty frightening video. We can see this woman here just very worried that this drone's going to be incoming onto her house while she's sitting here. You can see she's very nervous and almost hyperventilating too, trying to stay calm. Then she hears that massive explosion nearby. So very scary video. Yeah, again, about 176 drones entering into Ukraine last night. All right, now we're going to talk about these talks between the U.S. and Russia in Riyadh. So from Nexta, first footage from Russia-U.S. talks in Riyadh. Seated at the table, United States. So we had Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Trump's National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Special Envoy for the Middle East Steve Witkoff, delegations from both countries and representatives from Saudi Arabia. And then on the Russia side, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Presidential aide, former ambassador to the U.S. Yuri Ushakov, and head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, RDIF, Kirill Dmitriev. Okay, so these are the different people that were meeting today. The delegations on both sides for the U.S. and also for Russia as they met for talks in Riyadh. Okay, so there's a picture coming out today. Now some information coming out from this meeting. Military News UA. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio made a number of statements. Ending the war in Ukraine is possible only with the consent of all parties. The conditions must be acceptable. This may take a long time. Trump wants to end the war in Ukraine fairly and prevent its resumption in 2 to 3 years. The EU must be at the negotiating table at some point since it imposed sanctions against the Russian Federation. Okay, so these are some statements coming out today from Marco Rubio. We're not going to watch this video, just a short clip, but it's basically the same thing that you see right here. I already watched it for you guys. So just some major statements coming out from Marco Rubio today in terms of the U.S. side of things. Now also from Max 24, the meeting lasted almost 3 hours. The Russian and American delegations at the negotiations completed the first session. EU will not be in the upcoming negotiations on Ukraine. Its role is excluded, according to the Russian Foreign Ministry. If Europe wants to contribute to the establishment of peace in Ukraine, it is necessary to stop arms supplies to Kyiv. Okay, so two major statements here. Okay, let's talk about this first one. The EU not going to be involved in the upcoming negotiations. I mean, we already heard from Vladimir Zelenskyy that a major demand for him is he wants the EU to be involved. Okay, he wants them to be right there in the middle of these negotiations. And if they're not, he might not accept this deal. So I'm not sure how they're going to work that out. And then also, they're also claiming, Russia's also claiming that Europe needs to stop arms supplies to Kyiv, okay? That if they want to establish peace in Ukraine, they need to stop flowing weapons into Ukraine. Well, I guess on the other side of the aisle, you could say from the European side, well, Russia needs to stop attacking Ukraine, and then we'll stop sending weapons over to Kyiv, okay? So it's kind of the same thing, back and forth. But these were just some of the statements coming out on the Russian side as well. Now from Nexta, breaking, Russia and U.S. delegations conclude talks in Riyadh, excuse me. During negotiations in Saudi Arabia, Russia and the U.S. proposed a three-stage plan that includes a ceasefire in Ukraine, elections, and a final peace agreement. Rubio and Lavrov agreed to establish a consultation mechanism to ease irritants in bilateral relations. The U.S. and Russia also agreed to restore previous staffing levels at their embassies in Washington and Moscow. Additionally, the two sides discussed future economic cooperation and global energy prices. Meanwhile, the EU has stated that it will not lift sanctions against Russia even if the US does. European Commission announced that the EU will continue its own sanctions policy and is preparing its 16th sanctions package. The French foreign minister confirmed that the new sanctions will target Russia's energy sector. Okay, so we can kind of see here the growing divide between like the US and Europe. Europe's on the path of like, we're going to continue funding Ukraine. I'm going to show you guys a huge report on that here in just a little bit. We're going to continue the war is kind of what it seems like. They might want peace as well, but maybe they believe that Russia doesn't want to end the war. So for Europe, they're still continuing to fund Ukraine. And then the US kind of wants to end the war is what they're stating. And in some ways, it might seem like maybe they want to give Russia the upper hand here. Some people might agree with that, some might not. But we'll have to see how things play out. So these were just some more information coming out today from this meeting. Now from Anton Gerashenko, Russian media's first reports from the U.S.-Russian negotiations, the TLDR, which is too long didn't read, is it's all the U.S.'s fault. Russia is blameless. U.S. were hit by sanctions much harder than Russia. Biden's policy has undermined confidence in the dollar, while sanctions have helped Russia become more independent. Dialogue with the new U.S. administration allows us to tell the truth. The policy to contain Russia has failed. Many American companies have lost their position in the Russian market and their future approaches. Progress in Russia-U.S. negotiations is possible in the next 2 to 3 months. Russia and the U.S. need to move to joint projects, including in the Arctic. Okay, so this is what Russian media was reporting today. Okay, so some of the information on what Russia was putting out for their citizens in terms of these talks, this is what was stated on their end. Okay. Now, also from next day again, Russia-U.S. negotiations in Riyadh, key outcomes. The first meeting between Russian and U.S. delegations since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine has concluded in Saudi Arabia. The talks lasted about 4 hours. The Russian side was represented by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Presidential aide Yuri Ushakov. The U.S. was represented by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Special Envoy for the Middle East Steve Witkoff. Okay, so here's the positions here for Russia and the U.S. More information I can show you guys here. So from Yuri Ushakov, described the talks as not bad, while Lavrov called them very useful. Lavrov noted that one of the top priorities is restoring diplomatic relations and appointing ambassadors. Russia opposes the deployment of NATO troops in Ukraine, calling it unacceptable. Okay, that's a big one because we've been hearing a lot about that U.S. may deploy, Europe may deploy some troops into Ukraine. I don't know if that'll be part of a NATO contingent or not, but certain countries in Europe are planning to do that. Moscow and Washington agreed on measures to facilitate banking transactions between the two countries. The U.S. proposed a moratorium on strikes against Russian and Ukrainian energy infrastructure. The Russian side responded that it does not target Ukraine's civilian energy sector, only military-related facilities. So that was a big statement today from Lavrov. You guys can let me know if you agree with that. He basically came out stating that the Russian military does not target Ukraine's civilian energy sector. They only target military-related facilities. So you can let me know if you agree on that, because we literally just saw the other day they targeted in Poltava. There was like a gas facility over there that was primarily used for all the residents in the Poltava region. And there was like 9 different regions of the Poltava area that went out of, or they pretty much ran out of gas because these gas facilities were destroyed over there. So many civilians were affected by that. You guys can let me know if you agree with that or not. Now from the U.S. position, the State Department stated that both sides agreed to set up working groups to develop a plan for quickly ending the war in Ukraine. Mike Waltz emphasized that Donald Trump intends to move forward very quickly. The U.S. stated that Europe will inevitably be involved in further discussions on Ukraine. And then it says, what's next? No date has been set for a possible meeting between the U.S. and Russian presidents. Ushakov said it is unlikely to happen next week. Washington has chosen Keith Kellogg as a chief negotiator on Ukraine. Lavrov previously stated that Russia would name its own representative after the U.S. made its choice. Okay, so here's a photo coming out from there. Just today, we can see Marco Rubio here and also Sergei Lavrov. So major talks today, okay? And some good talking points here. We'll see how things unfold. And then I think one of the next steps here is we should see Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin holding a meeting sometime soon, maybe in the next few weeks. We don't really know yet when that's going to take place. But I do have more information here. Here's another update from Max 24. The U.S. and Russia may agree to hold a summit in Saudi Arabia, which could probably take place next week, according to Bloomberg. Okay, so we don't know for sure yet, but maybe next week there could be a summit being held between the U.S. and Russia. So maybe multiple days we might see high-level delegation teams from the U.S. and Russia meeting there once again on top of this meeting that we had this week. So possibly next week we might be seeing that, but it's not confirmed yet. We'll see what happens when it comes, okay? Now take a look at this from Joni Oscola. Prepare for the next phase where Russia via the U.S. proposes an unacceptable deal with no real concessions, knowing Ukraine will reject it. Trump and his administration will then shift the blame onto Ukraine for refusing to end the war. Okay, so this is obviously more of a speculation kind of statement coming out from Joni, but I wanted to share this with you guys as could this possibly be something that we see in the future? I think it could be likely, maybe. It all depends on how things play out. But, could we potentially see Russia come out with some crazy proposal deal to end the war? Ukraine comes out and says, hey, you know what? There's no way we're going to accept that. Russia already knew that Ukraine was not going to accept this deal. Then we have the Trump administration come out soon after and say, it's all Ukraine's fault. Why are they not ending this war? Maybe that could be a reason for them to cut aid or something like that. Now, again, that's obviously just speculation, just kind of throwing that in there as could this possibly be a scenario we could see playing out in the future? You guys can let me know if you think that is possible or not, or do you think this war is actually going to come to an end, or do you think the opposite? Do you think this war will just kind of continue and we will not see an end to it, at least not for right now, okay? So moving on to another update from Ozin Defender. As negotiations between the United States and Russia continue in Saudi Arabia, a U.S. Air Force RC-135V rivet joint electronic surveillance platform, or Jake-17, is taking a close look at the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. Okay, so while the U.S. and Russia were meeting in Saudi Arabia, we had a U.S. Air Force reconnaissance plane doing some reconnaissance missions near Kaliningrad. So I'm not sure why they would be doing that, but they definitely were taking a close look at Kaliningrad around the same time. You can see their flight pattern here. They're flying off the coast here in the Baltic Sea, came back around, did some more loops here over Poland, and then traveled on over to Lithuania. So not sure what that would be all about, but looks like they were doing some spying on Kaliningrad here recently. Now for Max 24, it was a surprise for me that Ukraine was not invited to the meeting in Saudi Arabia, says Zelenskyy. We do not feel support from the U.S., it's Russia's influence. The U.S. and Europe do not support Ukraine's membership in NATO. Okay, so these were some statements coming out from Zelenskyy today. I'm a little surprised too. Why is Zelenskyy not able to attend that meeting with Russia and the U.S.? I feel like Ukraine should be there, but maybe the U.S. wants to start it off like that, maybe do some talks with Russia. Maybe next they'll set up a meeting with Ukraine separately as well. We'll see if that happens to be the case. And then maybe later on down the road, that's when the real negotiations will start. And, we'll see if everybody can get together, all the parties, because I'm sure Europe's going to get involved at some point. And I do have some updates today on Turkey, too, because we did have Volodymyr Zelenskyy visiting Turkey today to meet with Erdogan. Okay, now for Max 24, it is fundamentally important to us that the negotiations take place not behind our backs, not behind the backs of the EU, says Zelenskyy. So once again, coming out, making another statement, mainly to the U.S. and Russia, letting them know don't hold negotiations behind our back, just like what they're doing in Saudi Arabia today. And, Ukraine wants to make sure they're involved, and they want Europe to be involved with this as well. So him coming out, reiterate that same claim. He's been stating that for a few days now. Now from the Ukrainian Review. In the event of a rash end to the war in Ukraine, an Afghan scenario is possible, says Zelenskyy. No agreements regarding Ukraine can be made without its participation. Zelenskyy called on the U.S. to more actively contribute to ending the war because without their support, victory is impossible. The U.S. is voicing these theses that please Putin, seeking to reach an agreement with him for the sake of a quick result, but a ceasefire cannot be considered a success. According to the president, the ceasefire negotiations must include security guarantees. He stressed that Ukraine will not make any territorial concessions. So this is another major statement coming out from Zelenskyy as well, basically stating that they want to make sure they have, real security guarantees. Don't rush this process. Make sure that Ukraine will be secure after this war comes to an end, that Russia cannot ever attack them again. It's just, once again, another major statement from Zelenskyy, reiterating that same claim of security guarantees for Ukraine, and also not for Ukraine, but also for Europe as well, okay? Now we'll move on to another one from Nexta. Serious damage to the Caspian pipeline. Kazakhstan's oil flow to decrease by 30%. Transneft has reported severe damage to a pumping station of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, CPC. Yesterday, the Kropotkinskaya station in the Krasnodar region was attacked by drones. The station is currently out of operation, according to Transneft. The aftermath of the attack will take about 1.5 to 2 months to fix. Wow. Which may lead to a 30% reduction in Kazakhstan's oil transportation. So take a look at this, guys. We talked about this yesterday. I gave you this update right here, okay? Kropotkinskaya, okay? This was an oil pumping station, and Ukraine attacked this along with the Ilsky oil refinery, which is a little bit northeast of here, up in this area. We had this Kropotkinskaya oil pumping station being targeted with drones as well, directly struck, and we heard it was offline. So this is an update just 24 hours later. Looks like we could potentially see a 30% reduction in Kazakhstan's oil transportation going through here. This is going to negatively impact Russia's economy, and the Caspian pipeline is definitely affected by this, and it looks like it's going to take, how long was it here? Several months to, says a half to 2 months to fix, okay? 1.5 to 2 months, excuse me. So probably a couple months before they get this thing back online. And apparently, from what I understand, this was one of the largest oil pumping stations on this entire Caspian Sea pipeline, okay? So very big news and major damage to this pipeline that has been done by Ukrainian drone strikes just yesterday, okay? So very big news there. Now from Astra, Russian oil depot Utek was attacked by drones in Belgorod region on the night of February 13th to the 14th, according to Astra sources, which was just about 4 or 5 days ago. Thus, at least 17 oil facilities in Russia have been attacked in the first 2 months of 2025, according to Astra's analysis. Drones targeted the Utek oil depot in the settlement of Prokhorovka. Sorry, it's a little hard to pronounce, guys. On the night of February 14th, preliminary information indicates no damage or casualties. The same depot was previously attacked in May 2024. At the time, Astra reported that the fuel tank was damaged. Okay, so it looks like this thing was attacked once in the past. So this was literally just reported just yesterday evening. Okay, so in the last 4 or 5 days, we had an oil depot in the Belgorod region being attacked, okay, called the Utek. So that was a new update today, and we didn't even hear anything about this like prior, 24 hours later after this attack took place. Astra's barely reporting this today, so maybe that information was just starting to come out, but looks like we did have an oil depot being attacked just a few days ago as well. Now moving on to War Translated. The U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, will arrive in Ukraine on Wednesday, February 14th, which is tomorrow. He stated this to journalists in Brussels on Monday. As for the trip to Ukraine, it is still in the finalization stage. Will I go there? The answer is yes. Will I have the opportunity to meet President Zelenskyy? The answer is yes, Kellogg noted. Okay, so we should also be hearing that Zelenskyy was saying yesterday he wanted to take Keith Kellogg to the front lines inside of Ukraine to show him the reality of the battlefield situation on the ground. So that way he himself can see, what's going on over there. What can they do to end this war? That way he can get a bird's eye view of the situation before making any kind of decisions. I think that's very important that Zelenskyy does that. So that way the U.S. doesn't just kind of make up whatever they want to do without actually seeing the realities on the ground. So that's a very big update today. So he should be showing up there tomorrow. Now from Nexta, shares of Russian companies flew down after the talks between Russia and the U.S. in Riyadh. The Moscow Exchange Index also collapsed amid the talks. Okay, so from what I understand, I think it was down just like 1%. I wouldn't really consider this a collapse, but we can see majority of the Russian stock market was in the red today after these talks. So it looks like the Russian stock market was not too happy about the talks over there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it could have been a large reason for that was sanctions, as maybe the Russian stock market was expecting the U.S. to maybe lift some sanctions on Russia, and maybe because that was not announced at the time, and maybe that's why we saw this dip in the stock market over there. But definitely I would not consider it a crash, more of a dip, as it's just down about 1% today. Last we had here on 5:55 a.m. today, okay? So now also from the Ukrainian Review, Turkey supports full territorial integrity of Ukraine, says Erdogan. If Turkey can provide Ukraine with the necessary security guarantees, we would like to see Turkey also involved in this process. We will never, under any circumstances, recognize our temporarily occupied territories as parts of Russia, Zelenskyy said. Okay, so you can see a picture here of Zelenskyy and President Erdogan in Turkey. They met today for talks on ending this war as well, and it looks like Turkey wants to be involved in the negotiations potentially, and they do support full territorial integrity of Ukraine. Okay, so that's very big, and we'll see if they get involved in this process with these talks. And it looks like Ukraine does want them to be. So you can see here from Nexta, Zelenskyy, as president of Ukraine, I will not accept any ultimatums from Russia. Zelenskyy and Erdogan have begun bilateral talks on resolving the war in Ukraine. The Turkish president reaffirmed his support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and stated that Turkey is the ideal location for negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Erdogan also emphasized that Turkish businesses are interested in supporting Ukraine's post-war reconstruction. Volodymyr Zelenskyy made it clear that he will not accept any Russian ultimatums. He also noted that negotiations between Russian and U.S. representatives in Saudi Arabia are taking place without Ukraine's participation. Both the EU and the US and the UK and Turkey must be involved in discussions on a peace plan and the development of security guarantees for Ukraine, the Ukrainian president stated. Okay, so these are the top nations here. And so he wants the EU and US, UK, and Turkey to all be involved in discussions on this peace plan. Okay, so Turkey most likely going to be involved here very soon. Zelenskyy also took part in the official opening ceremony of Ukraine's new embassy in Ankara. Meanwhile, Reuters, citing sources, reports that Trump's special envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, is set to travel to Kyiv this evening. Okay, so we should also be seeing, like we reported there, Keith Kellogg going to be showing up tonight inside of Kyiv. Here's another picture coming out of Zelenskyy and Erdogan as they held a conference together talking about this war today. So now we'll move on to another update from Anton Gerashenko. 2 explosions took place on the Mored Sea Jewel oil tanker near the Italian city of Savona on the night between Friday and Saturday. The tanker was transporting Russian oil, Ukrainska Pravda media reports. The cause of explosions is unknown, although the crew claims they heard loud bangs and the nature of the damage suggests the use of explosive devices. An investigation is ongoing. The Sea Jewel is one of the tankers that were loaded with Russian cargo 3 times in 2024 in February, March, and May, and came back after each unloading. Earlier, Ukrainska Pravda found out that the Sea Jewel tanker was spotted unloading in the Romanian port of Constanta after arriving from the Turkish port of Seyhan, if I'm saying that right. Sources in law enforcement agencies reported that the tanker was supposed to be heading to the Russian city of Novorossiysk for a transshipment. Okay, so interesting. Looks like it was heading to Russia. And this is actually the second time, if I'm not mistaken, that we have heard of a Russian oil tanker exploding. Okay, we heard this not too long ago. There was another tanker in the port of Ust-Luga near St. Petersburg inside of Russia. There was one that they heard explosions in like the engine room or something like that, and the ship actually started to sink. There was talks that it could have been explosives. Now we're also seeing this with another tanker. So are these sabotage events going on with these oil tankers? And maybe this is the West doing this. Maybe this is Ukraine carrying out these attacks. We don't really know. But this is multiple times now that I believe we have been seeing oil tankers that are exploding, okay, or having some sort of explosions on board, okay? So pretty crazy. Something I'm going to keep an eye on because we continuously keep seeing this recently. All right, now a huge update here, guys, from Nexta. The EU may provide Ukraine with a 700 billion euro aid package. Yes, you heard that right. Whenever I first saw this, I was looking at that and I was like, am I seeing 700 billion? No, there's no way. That's got to be a typo or something. I was thinking maybe 7 billion euro. But when I saw 700 billion euros, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. Okay, so take a look at this. European Union is preparing a massive aid package to fund military equipment for Ukraine. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock revealed the scale of this initiative, stating that the amount could reach up to around 700 billion euros. We are launching a major package, one that has never been seen on this scale before, Baerbock told Bloomberg on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. Baerbock emphasized that peace can only be achieved through strength. For this, Ukraine needs strong and long-term security guarantees. a strong NATO alliance, and progress in its EU accession negotiations. As Europeans, as Germans, we stand firmly by Ukraine, providing military, humanitarian, and financial support. Since the full scale Russian invasion, we Europeans have supported Ukraine with more than 134 billion euros, and Germany alone has contributed nearly 44 billion. Is Europe finally waking up? Okay, so this is a very big update, guys. I mean, if this happens to be a thing, and Ukraine gets 700 billion euros in support from the EU. I mean, this could be definitely game changing for Ukraine potentially. They could be getting all kinds of crazy weaponry, and we already know Ukraine wants to beef up their armed forces right now. They're working on lots of different missiles and drones and everything. And Ukraine's talking about all these security guarantees. That could be a huge security guarantee for Ukraine moving forward. And if this war ends up continuing, that could really help out Ukraine big time. So this is a huge update. I might do a separate video on this today. We'll see if I get more information. I might do a separate video and just kind of show you guys more details on this, kind of dive into it. But that's a very big update today. Okay, guys, if that happens to be a thing, that'll be huge. Now for Max 24, 170 out of 176 Russian drones shot down, including 103 UAVs shot down by air defense and 67 suppressed by electronic warfare. Okay, guys, so 176 drones today going into Ukraine, and this is probably one of the highest amounts of drones that came from Russia in the recent past. So also, I believe yesterday we wasn't able to find an update to show you guys how many drones were entering into Ukraine yesterday. So yesterday was actually, I believe, 147. Today was 176. So if you notice recently, we've been seeing a major increase in the amount of drones going into Ukraine. I think it's been well over 120 per day. And just not too long ago, maybe a month back, we were seeing much less than 100, sometimes only 50 in one day. So Russia is for sure picking up heavy attacks with drones inside of Ukraine recently. All right, now from the Kyiv Independent, these are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of February 18th, according to the armed forces of Ukraine. All right, guys, our final update of the day. Russia's losses as of February 18th, 1,170 troops, 12 AFVs, 74 vehicles and fuel tanks, 12 tanks, 53 artillery systems, 181 UAVs, 2 MLRS, 1 cruise missile, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 special equipment. Okay, so something I'm noticing today is still maintaining right around 1,200 troops. We've been seeing that recently over the last week and a half. So not too many troop losses being recorded here in the recent past. And also today, only 74 vehicles and fuel tanks. This number's usually been up over 120 to 150. And today, a little bit less than normal as well, 12 tanks being destroyed, okay? So it looks like not too many attacks were taking place last night, as there's a lot less equipment being destroyed today compared to the last few days, okay? So just huge updates today coming out from this war. We had the Hmeimim Airbase being attacked, those attacks inside of Ukraine, and then also these very big talks between the U.S. and Russia in Riyadh today, and just numerous other huge updates from this war. And I'm very curious to see if the EU is going to go through with this plan of pushing through 700 billion euros for Ukraine, especially if this war comes to an end. Is that still going to be a thing? Or is this something where they're expecting Ukraine to continue this war? Because that's kind of what it seems like in some ways coming from Europe, as there was many European nations just the other day or yesterday at that emergency meeting in Paris. Some nations were coming out stating that it was fantasy land, basically, to think that this war is going to come to an end. So quite a few European nations do believe that this war is going to continue. But let me know what you guys think about all these details down below. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.